Thank you. Maybe seated photographing session.
All right. All right, Mr. Lally.
May we approach this briefly?
Okay. Okay, you can go ahead, Mr. Lally.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Sergeant Buchanan, those items as far as the clothing items that you displayed for the jury just prior to the recess, those were the same clothing items that you recovered from the hospital room of the Good Samaritan on January 29th, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, you had mentioned earlier in your testimony that those items had been placed into one bag initially. What, if anything, happened with those items as far as their keeping or their bagging once you got back to the office or to your where the evidence room is?
Due to the condition of those items after they arrived at the office, the items were laid out on butcher's paper that we utilize for evidence viewing and allowed to dry naturally because they were soaking wet.
And as far as when they were done with that sort of drying process, how were they packaged from there?
They were packaged in the bags, sealed up, and stored for transport and processing.
And so those would be bags individual for each clothing item, is that correct?
Each item the way that it was packaged, the pants with the belt and the boxers, and then so on and so forth with the sweatshirt and sneakers.
And get to this a little bit more in a moment, but at some point there were pieces of plastic, red and clear plastic, that were recovered by you and other troopers from Fairview Road, is that correct?
That's correct.
at any point in time were pieces of clear and red plastic that were recovered from 34 Fairview Road ever placed inside the same evidence bag as any piece of clothing that you recovered from this bag?
No, absolutely not.
Now, with reference to the hospital of Good Samaritan, in addition to yourself and Trooper Proctor, were there other members of the state police or other units of the state police that arrived at the hospital at some point?
Yes, sir. Lieutenant Mello came to the hospital to document the victim and the clothing, and he's assigned to the state police crime scene services section.
Now, as far as the crime scene services section, or CSSS, what, if any, role do they have with relation to your investigation in this case, or your investigations in general as far as documentation is concerned?
Crime scene services section assists us in documenting scenes through video and photographs. They also assist in collecting latent prints, fingerprints. They assist in collecting impressions, like foot impressions in mud or soil, and those types of missions.
Now, there are a number of different troopers that are assigned to that particular unit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And as far as over the course of this investigation, how many occasions approximately were there that a member of the crime scene services section responded to memorialize or photograph different scenes or different areas throughout the course of your investigation in this case?
Just off the top of my head, there would be 4, 5, maybe 6 instances where a trooper or sergeant from crime scene services responded to the scene to assist us in this investigation.
Now, at any point in time over the course of the investigation, when crime scene services troopers responded to document anything, was it ever the same trooper more than once?
No, it was not.
And so with regard to January 29th, back at the Good Samaritan Hospital, there were Sergeant Mello arrived to document or photograph Mr. O'Keefe, correct?
That's correct.
And Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes. Mr. Lally, do you want me to give my instruction now or in a few minutes?
Just about 30 seconds.
Okay.
So Sergeant Mechanic just placed 3 photographs before you. Do you recognize what's depicted in those 3 photographs?
I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
That is Mr. John O'Keefe.
And what's contained within those photographs, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you saw of Mr. O'Keefe's body at the Good Samaritan Hospital on January 29th?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, may I approach again?
Yes.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth seeks to introduce in a minute.
All right. So there's no objection, right? All right. So, folks, the Commonwealth is introducing into evidence through this witness certain photographs that are not pleasant and may be considered graphic photos. Sometimes evidence is presented that creates an emotional reaction in jurors. For example, it's natural and understandable to feel sympathy and empathy when you hear about a person who was injured in some serious way or suffered in some way or who has passed away. But as jurors, you've taken an oath to follow the law, and I instruct you that you must separate any emotional reaction on your part from the informational value and weight of the evidence. You must not be influenced in any way by the nature of some of the testimony, and you must find the facts in this case based only on the evidence. You can't find facts or base your decision on sympathy, anger, passion, or prejudice or pity for or against either side in this case. Rather, your verdict must be based solely on the evidence and my instructions on the law. All right, with that, Mr. Lally, those photos will be in evidence.
Thank you. Your Honor, with the court's permission, may I publish just briefly each of the 3 respective photographs?
Yes. Thank you.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph 2866. And Sergeant, direct your attention to the screen. Is that what's displayed on there now has been marked as Exhibit 4 441. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And using the laser pointer on the desk before you, if you could draw the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observed in this particular photograph of Mr. O'Keefe.
I observed the swelling of the eyelids, slight laceration of the nostril and the eyelid, the blood pooling on the bed, and that depiction of Mr. O'Keefe.
Ms. Gilman, can I have photograph 2857? Again, Sergeant, do you recognize what's up on the screen and is now been marked as Exhibit 442?
I do.
And similar to the prior exhibit, if you could, using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observed in this photograph.
I observed the parallel lacerations, abrasions and markings on the skin of Mr. O'Keefe, limited between that point there and that point there, as I described earlier in my testimony.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have 2859. And again, Sergeant, do you recognize what's up on the screen and has now been marked as Exhibit 443?
I do.
And this is, what do you see in this photograph?
It's the same abrasions to Mr. O'Keefe's right arm, just further up on the bicep, tricep, shoulder area.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gilman, you can take that. Now, Sergeant, taking you back to January 29th, 2022, after you left the Good Samaritan Hospital, where is it that you went?
We went to 345 Country Hill Drive in Dayton.
And that was the residence of Ms. Reed's parents, is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, on your way from the Good Samaritan in Brockton to the residence in Dayton, what, if any, communication did either you or Trooper Proctor have with regard to the Dayton police?
I advised Trooper Proctor to contact Dayton Police Dispatch and advised them that we would be responding to the location, 345 Country Hill Drive, and seizing a vehicle. And we were requesting uniformed patrols to assist us in that mission.
And why was that request made of the local PD?
We were going into their jurisdiction. There was a blizzard going on. We were considerate of the circumstance and wanted to be courteous to the Reed residents and not just show up without any uniform presence. We have never met the Reed family. They have never met us. And with the clothing that we were wearing, it would be difficult for them to see that we were law enforcement.
And so as you arrive in that area of the residence in Dayton, where did you position yourselves and when did you arrive in relation to the marked unit from Dayton?
We called them while we were still on the highway and gave them an approximate time of arrival. GPS was not accurate due to the conditions at the time on the roadways. Once we arrived to Dayton, I positioned my vehicle at the top of Country Hill Drive, awaiting a marked uniformed officer from Dayton to meet us there.
And if you know, about how long approximately did it take you to get from Brockton to Dayton on that particular day?
From Brockton to Dayton, it took us about 45 minutes to an hour to travel that distance.
And if you know, about what time was it that you arrived at the residence in Dayton?
We arrived approximately on the street at 2:30 or so in the afternoon, and we waited for a significant amount of time for the uniform patrol to arrive.
And when the uniform patrol arrived, at some point, did you learn the name of at least one of those officers that arrived at the residence with you?
At the time, I did, yes.
And was that in Officer Barrows?
Yes, it was.
And so when Officer Barrows arrived, where did you then proceed with Officer Barrows upon his arrival?
Well, the road was only plowed the width of one vehicle. So even though he and his partner were in a F-150 or 250 marked police cruiser, we could only travel in single line. We traveled up to the cul-de-sac, turned around and positioned our vehicles facing back out to the way that we entered the roadway or that street. We parked on the roadway since the driveway was not plowed, and we waded through the snow to the front door of the residence.
When you say the driveway was not plowed or you waded through the snow, can you describe to the jury sort of the condition of the driveway as you made your way from the street to the house?
With the blowing winds and the drifting snow, there were locations along our walk to the property with snow varying from knee-high to up to my waist. For reference, I'm 6'1", so it was quite deep in some locations.
And as you made your way to the home, what, if anything, did you observe in the driveway?
As we walked up to the driveway in front of the garage, we observed a large Lexus black in color SUV bearing Massachusetts registration 3GC684.
And subsequently, did you come to find out whose vehicle that was?
Yes, once we queried the plate, we learned that the vehicle was registered to the defendant.
And as you're going by this vehicle, what, if any, observations did you make of the vehicle as you were walking past it toward the home?
I observed a damaged rear right taillight fixture on the vehicle. From my vantage point, I also told Trooper Proctor to approach the vehicle closer and confirm what I was seeing, which he did.
And as far as that damage to the right passenger taillight area, can you describe sort of what it was that you saw during that initial phase?
Absolutely. During the initial phase, I observed snow compacted and caked onto portions of the taillight casing. There were pieces missing, and I knew that because the left side taillight was intact.
And as you made your way past the vehicle to the home, at some point, are you greeted or do you meet someone in the area of the home?
Yes, once we walked up to the front door, I rang the doorbell, and Mr. Reed opened the front door with the glass storm door, unable to open due to the level of snow on the ground and on the front steps.
And so where were you directed to enter the home from?
Mr. Reed directed us to the garage door, at which point it opened up and Trooper Proctor and I entered the garage. We were once again greeted by Mr. Reed and invited into the home.
And Officer Barrows, where did he remain when you and Trooper Proctor went into the home?
He remained outside with the vehicle. During our time in the home, Officer Barrows came in and asked what the plan was and offered to have DPW plow out the driveway because the tow truck was not able to maneuver into the driveway in order to retrieve that vehicle.
Now, as far as during any time that you were on scene or at this residence in Dayton, did you yourself or did you observe Trooper Proctor touch that vehicle at any point in any way while you were there?
No.
And did you observe Officer Barrows or any other personnel beyond the tow truck driver touch the vehicle in any way?
No.
And as far as the tow truck driver was concerned, did you observe that individual touch anywhere in the rear passenger side area of that vehicle at any time that you were there?
No.
So then you proceed inside the home, and when you get inside the home, where did you go and who, if anyone, did you speak to?
We were directed by Mr. Reed to the living room where the defendant was seated on the couch. She had her laptop on her lap and her phone resting on the right armrest of the couch.
Now, in addition to the defendant and her father, who, if anyone else, was present when you talked to Ms. Reed?
The defendant's mother, Mrs. Reed, was also present in the home.
And the defendant's mother and the defendant's father, were they present throughout the course of your interview or your discussion with Ms. Reed?
Yes, they were.
And at any point in time, did you ask them to leave or anything like that?
I did not know.
Now, with respect to, can you describe sort of the demeanor or the tone of the conversation that you had with Ms. Reed that afternoon?
It was polite, courteous. She had just went through a traumatic event, so we were, considerate of her losing her boyfriend. And we had a normal tone conversation. We were in the information gathering, fact-finding portion of the investigation. We simply wanted to collect her recollection of events that she remembered.
And so throughout the course of this interview, how are you standing? Are you seated? Or how are you positioned in relation to Ms. Reed, and how is she positioned in relation to you?
She was sitting on the couch. We were standing across the room. I don't recall if there was a coffee table, but if there was a coffee table, we would be standing on the opposite side of that coffee table if there was one present. I do not remember if there was one present, but that's the distance approximately from me to the defense table.
And if you could describe to the jury sort of how did that interview or how did that conversation begin? What was said?
First things first, we introduce ourselves, advise the individual we're speaking with who we are, where we work, and what we're looking to find out. The defendant was advised that we're looking to get a recollection of the events, what happened, what she observed, what she remembers from the night before, and to walk us through the last 24 hours or so of activity.
And prior
Do I need to give an instruction, Mr. Lally? I'm not sure exactly. Why don't I see counsel at sidebar for a minute?
You did.
All right, so I interrupted you, Sergeant, and I'm going to instruct you jurors, okay? We're about to hear testimony about statements allegedly made by the defendant, Karen Reed, allegedly concerning the crimes that are charged in this case. Before you may even consider any such statement as evidence, the Commonwealth must prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant made the statement that she's alleged to have made, and that she made it voluntarily, freely, and rationally. In determining whether any statement made by the defendant was voluntary or not, you may consider all the surrounding circumstances. These include when and where the statement was made, the nature of any conversations with the police or questioning by the police, and the defendant's physical and mental condition, including her intelligence, age, education, experience, and personality. Your decision does not turn upon any one factor. You must consider the totality of the surrounding circumstances. I'll instruct you about this again at the end of the case, but for purposes of, as you hear the testimony, that's the lens that you have to sort of hear it through. All right, with that, Mr. Lally?
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Sergeant Buchanan, when you began to speak to the defendant, prior to any sort of substantive conversation, what, if any, conversation did you have with her about the conversation you were going to have?
I just asked her to recount any events and the history between the actions that were taking place.
And how did she initially respond to that?
She stated that she's willing to answer our questions. She just doesn't want to go into too much detail about what transpired. And given the circumstances that she had just lived through, I understood and gave her that courtesy.
And as far as that interview or that conversation went, can you describe that conversation or the contents of that conversation to the jury?
Absolutely. The conversation was normal tone of voice like I am speaking to you right now. Ms. Reed responded in the same tone of voice, answered questions. The content of the conversation began with her saying that, as I stated, she doesn't want to go into too much detail, but she was willing to answer our questions. We asked what she had for plans, what she had for as far as activity the night before, leading up to Mr. O'Keefe being discovered. She stated that she was in a relationship with Mr. O'Keefe that morning, meaning the 28th of January. She got into a fight with Mr. O'Keefe over what the niece and nephew were being fed for breakfast, or what they had for breakfast. She went on to say that she met Mr. O'Keefe at C.F. McCarthy's approximately 9 p.m. the night of the 28th of January, 2022. She stated that the gentlemen were drinking, consuming beers, Bud Lights, and she was drinking vodka soda. Prior to moving on to the bar at Waterfall, the defendant was asked where she parked her vehicle. She told me that she parked her vehicle on Washington Street across the street from C.F. McCarthy's, facing northbound. So the vehicle was on the side of Waterfall Bar and Grill. We went on through the conversation, the interview, to the Waterfall restaurant, at which point she was asked if she left C.F. McCarthy's with a beverage or a container from that establishment, to which point she stated that she did not. She also confirmed that Mr. O'Keefe did not have any injuries on him when she interacted with him at C.F. McCarthy's or the Waterfall. He did not get into any verbal or physical altercations with anyone to have sustained those injuries. She stated that once at the Waterfall, they stayed for approximately an hour, hanging out with acquaintances. And then they left the Waterfall. She drove them to, after they were invited to a residence, she drove them to a location in Canton where she dropped Mr. O'Keefe off. She was asked if she saw Mr. O'Keefe walk into the home at 34 Fairview, and she stated she did not. She stated that she made a 3-point turn after dropping him off and left. She was asked whether or not Mr. O'Keefe, excuse me, let me back up. She was asked if she knew, how she found out about the damage to her vehicle, to which she stated, quote, "I don't know, it happened last night," end quote.
Now, at some point, Earlier in the interview, what, if any, indication did she give as to who Mr. O'Keefe was with when she arrived at C.H. McCarthy's and sort of how long he had been with those respective people?
She indicated that Mr. O'Keefe was with Mr. Camarano, Kurt Roberts, at which point she was asked to provide contact information, meaning phone numbers for those individuals, at which time she picked up the phone on the right armrest of the couch, manipulated the device, entering a passcode, and provided that phone number to Trooper Proctor and I.
And at any point in time in the conversation or interview you had with her, what, if anything, did the defendant say in regard to why she had not gone into the residence at Fairview Road herself?
The defendant stated that she was having stomach issues and did not want to enter the residence.
Now, what, if anything, did she tell you about the later on that morning of the 29th?
She stated that when she woke up, she began looking for Mr. O'Keefe. And when she found him in the snow, she began CPR on Mr. O'Keefe.
And what, if anything, did she say to you about any observations she made of Mr. O'Keefe later on that morning as far as any injuries to Mr. O'Keefe?
The defendant stated that while she was performing CPR, Mr. O'Keefe had sustained injuries and was bleeding from the nose and the mouth.
And if you recall, what, if anything, did she say about Mr. O'Keefe's eyes at that time?
The defendant stated that Mr. O'Keefe's eyes were swollen.
Is that both eyes? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, as the interview progressed, at some point, did you ask questions seeking further details?
Yes, I did.
And details about what specifically were you asking?
Once we got to the point in time where the defendant told me she did a 3-point turn, I asked her to walk through step by step of her operating the vehicle and exactly what she did. Prior to that, I asked her, so she was asked to give a step-by-step recollection of how she, what she did in manipulating the vehicle and leaving the scene.
And at that point, was the interview terminated?
Yes, it was.
Now, once the interview concluded or was terminated, what, if anything, did you do with reference to Ms. Reed's phone and the defendant's vehicle?
Once the interview was terminated, I advised Ms. Reed that her phone was going to be seized as evidence and her vehicle was going to be seized as evidence as well.
And did you subsequently seize both of those items, sir?
Yes, we did.
And similar to the clothing of Mr. O'Keefe, as far as evidence was concerned, was that packaged and taped and transported back to the office in a similar fashion?
The vehicle was transported via tow truck that was dispatched by Dighton PD on our request.
And so when you get back outside of the residence after the conclusion of your interview with the defendant, what, if anything, did you observe going on with regard to the driveway and or any other vehicles that weren't there when you went into the house?
During our interview, I glanced out the window and I saw flashing amber lights and a tow truck plowing the driveway. So the driveway was plowed and the tow truck was, plow truck was plowing the driveway, not the tow truck. And the tow truck was loading the vehicle onto the flatbed.
And from at any point in time when you were outside of the residence, what, if any, observations did you make as far as cameras or anything like that on the exterior of the home?
I did not see cameras on the exterior of the home at that point in time.
Subsequent to that date, did you become aware that there were exterior cameras that record on the exterior of the home indictment?
Subsequently, yes, we learned that there was video recording of the residence and the driveway.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you a disc. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes,
And what do you recognize that to be?
I recognize it to be Dighton videos as it relates to the location where the interview and the vehicle was seized from.
And what's contained on that, as far as the video is concerned, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of what you observed as far as the defendant's vehicle being loaded onto a tow truck?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm up to seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit.
No objection.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could publish those two short clips for the jury?
Yes.
Gentlemen, if you could click on it and then pause when it begins. If you could press the line.
Still, you need to keep your voice up.
Yes. You pause right there, please. Now, the Sergeant Mechanic, from this particular point of the video, do you recognize the vehicle that has just pulled into the driveway?
Yes, I do.
Is that the same driveway that you had walked up from the street to the house in Dighton on that morning?
Yes, it is.
As far as the vehicle is concerned, what do you recognize that vehicle to be?
That would be the Lexus SUV owned by the defendant, Bear, Massachusetts registration 3 GC 684.
Someone, if you could press play for a minute. This moment, if you could pause right there. Two individuals just exited that vehicle, is that correct, Sergeant?
That's correct.
Do you recognize who those individuals are, as far as who they are, from what part of the vehicle they exited from?
Yes, the passenger side exit was the defendant, and then the driver's side vehicle was Mr. Reed.
That'd be and the father, is that correct?
That's correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could play this to the end. Now, Sergeant, towards the end of that video, did you observe the defendant and her father in any specific area in relation to that vehicle?
Yes, I observed the defendant and her father at the rear right taillight, gesturing or signaling towards the affected, damaged, and missing parts of the taillight.
Objection.
I'll allow just the direction that they were signaling out.
Move to strike the remainder.
Okay?
As far as that vehicle's position within the driveway, is that essentially the position that you observed it in when you and Trooper Proctor and Officer Barrows were walking up the driveway to the home?
Yes, it was.
And Ms. Gilman, if I got a second of those two videos. If you could pause it there, please. Again, Sergeant Mechanic, if you could describe to the jury what you observed of significance within this particular video.
This video captures the vehicle being moved into position to be loaded up onto the flatbed for transport from the scene.
Gentlemen, if you could play for me. Pause right there. I just asked her to pause right there.
Yeah, you really have to keep your voice up.
Yes. Sergeant Mechanic, from this still image from this video, what, if anything, of significance do you observe in relation to the vehicle at this time that is being loaded onto the tow truck?
The rear tail light is illuminated. You could see a white light coming from that tail light.
If you could, using that laser pointer you have before you, just direct the jury's attention to the specific area you're talking about.
Right there.
Ms. Gilman, if you could play this through the. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Now, Sergeant Mechanic, as far as when you left the residence in Dayton, where is it that you went?
Can we turn the lights on, Mr. Lay?
Yes, my apologies.
Once we left the residence in Dayton, we proceeded following the tow truck back to the Canton Police Department.
And was there anywhere else that either you or the tow truck went between Dayton and the Canton Police Department?
No, sir.
And when you say we, it's yourself and Trooper Proctor, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, once you arrived at the Canton Police Department, where did the vehicle go?
The vehicle was unloaded and put into a heated sally port located at the Canton Police Department.
And in reference to the Canton Police Department and putting it in the sally port, why was it that it was taken to that location?
It's a location that serves as a storage for a vehicle that would suffice for the size of the vehicle. The location is, as it related to the crime that took place was investigated, was in that town. So we utilized their facility. It was also a heated facility to help melt the snow that had been accumulating on the vehicle.
And at some point, well, as far as some point subsequent to this, did you learn that there are exterior cameras of the Canton Police Department as well as cameras within the Sallyport garage area?
Yes, I did.
And have you reviewed each of those respective cameras prior to your testimony here today?
Yes, I have.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
So I'm showing you a disc, just have to look at that, look up when you finish. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
The Canton Police Department driveway with video.
And what's contained on that is that fair and accurate portrayal of yourself and the tow truck pulling into the Canton Police Department driveway on that afternoon or early evening of January 29th.
Yes, it is.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Almost seek to introduce the minutes of that exhibit.
They have just a moment, Councilman.
Okay.
Mike. Thank you for that, Your Honor. No objection.
Okay.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, we publish that video to your time.
Okay.
And just for reference points, in regard to this view of this camera, Sergeant, you're familiar with the Canton Police Station?
Yes, I am.
And so where is this camera view in relation to the Canton Police Department and the Sallyport garage where the vehicle eventually goes?
This camera is capturing the driveway entrance to the Canton Police Department. As viewed from Washington Street, that driveway there is on the left side of the structure. The camera itself is pointing towards the entrance of the driveway to the Canton Police Department. As you can see, the brake light illuminated in the shot. That is a Canton Police cruiser sitting at the edge of the driveway right by Washington Street.
So for orientation purposes, as far as the tow truck and your vehicle, is that coming from the top of the screen to the bottom or the bottom to the top?
It's coming from the top left to the bottom right of the screen towards the rear of the building where the Sally Port is located.
Thank you, Ms. Gilman, if you could. Pause there, Ms. Gilman. Now, as far as what's depicted in this still shot of this video, Sergeant, what if anything do you observe?
That is the tow truck transporting the defendant's vehicle, arriving at Canton PD. My vehicle with Trooper Proctor inside, me operating, are following closely behind as we did the entire way from Dayton all the way to Canton.
Ms. Gilman, if you could play that to the end. Thank you. Now, as far as the interior of the Sally Port garage,
Put the lights. Thank you.
as far as the interior Sally Port of the garage, you mentioned that that is a heated area, is that correct?
That's correct.
And as far as the heat within that, do you know how that is produced or how hot it gets in there as far as the time that you spent within there?
I do not know, but it was a standard garage heating system that blows hot air. As far as temperature, when the doors were open, that day it was freezing cold. It was, I believe, like 18 degrees with, winds blowing. So inside the garage inside the Sally Port with the doors open, it was quite cold. Once the doors shut, the temperature rose above freezing, and the snow began to melt off of the vehicle.
And from the arrival of that vehicle into the Sally Port garage area, are you aware or have you reviewed video in reference to that?
Yes, I did.
And Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Showing you another disc, sir. Just ask you to review that one when you finish. And do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, I do.
And does that contain the video that you were just testifying about as far as the arrival of the vehicle at the Canton Police Department Sally Port garage?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
How about proceed to introduce in minutes and exhibit?
No objection, Your Honor.
Now, Sergeant, before we get to that video, if I could just ask, if you know, approximately what time was it that you left Dayton following that tow truck back to the Canton Police Department?
We left Dayton approximately 4:15, 4:20, and we followed the vehicle back to Canton, arriving probably around 5:30 or so p.m.
Thank you, sir. And Your Honor, with the court's permission, if we could publish that video for the jury.
Okay.
Gentlemen, if you could just pause there for a moment. Sergeant, direct your attention up to the video on the screen just for orientation purposes again. First of all, do you recognize what's depicted in this video?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize it to be?
That is the Sallyport two-bay garage at Canton Police Department with the antique Canton Cruiser on the bottom of the screen and the open spot for a vehicle in the middle of the screen with the four-wheel drive all-terrain vehicle at the top.
Now, as far as, again, for orientation purposes, the driveway that the jury just witnessed in the prior exhibit, is that to the left of the screen, the right of the screen, or something else?
The driveway is to the right of the screen.
And this vehicle, the defendant's vehicle is sort of taken into the garage from the opposite side or to the left of the screen, is that correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could,
Your Honor, may we approach briefly?
Okay, could you pause that, Ms. Gilman? Take a short afternoon break on our long days at about a half an hour, but I think the better use of our time is to give you a 10-minute break now. And then we'll go straight through till 4 o'clock. And if anybody needs a break,
All rise for the court, please.
Jurors, follow me, please.
Jim.
John, if may the witness leave the stand just for a moment.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, we'll see you back here in about 10 minutes, Sergeant.
You are unmuted.
Okay, so you want us to watch this now?
If you please the court, yes. May I get just a little closer?
Sure. Can we turn out the lights, please, Dave? Thank you. Is that the end of it, Mr. Lally, or
I believe so, yes.
is that the end of it, Ms. Gilman? Okay. All right, lights on, please, Dave. Thank you. All right, so I have a copy of the printed docket on 424. Paper number 347 was the Commonwealth's Notice of Discovery XL. I just asked Mr. McDermott to print it for me. Our printer up here doesn't work. All right, so that was before we impaneled. That was the day, I believe, of the long motion in limine trial. All right, so we'll take a 5-minute break, okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
Like I said, we gotta give him something.
Thank you. Be seated. Close back.
All right, so we're ready to pick right up where we left off?
We're ready. Thank you, Robert.
So I'll just be clear, the objection's overruled, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you.
Sergeant, we're going to start up again with the video.
Your Honor.
Your Honor, for the record, I believe we're picking up where it was paused, which was 5:35:36.
Okay?
If you could pause right there. And Sergeant, as far as the condition of the vehicle as you observe it in this sort of pause still shot of the video, is that a fair and accurate portrayal of the condition as far as the snow or ice or anything you observe on that vehicle when it came into the Sally Port garage?
Yes, it is.
Just gentlemen, if you could explain from there. If you could just pause there for a moment. Sergeant's almost falling in the video.
All right, so keep your voice up.
Sergeant Mechanic, with reference to any individuals you see in this video, do you recognize any of those individuals?
I can recognize Trooper Proctor myself. Other than that, I don't remember exactly who else was present at this moment in time.
If you could start using the laser pointer before you, just direct your attention to where you observe yourself and where you observe Trooper Proctor.
That's Trooper Proctor and myself. Yeah.
At any point in time when you were present with this vehicle in the Sally Port garage this evening of January 29, 2022, did either yourself or did you observe Trooper Proctor touch or manipulate in any way the right rear passenger side area of that vehicle?
No, we did not.
Ms. Gilman, if you could play from here. if you could pause there just for a moment. Sergeant Mechanic, from what you're observing in this video, what you've seen or what you recall from this, what is it that you and Chief Proctor and some of the other officers are doing now?
We're establishing a perimeter around the vehicle with yellow tape in order to prevent or alert and advise anyone in the area to stay away from the vehicle.
Ms. Gilman, if you could just play to the end, please. You can take that down, Mr. Officer. We can have the lights back on. Now, Sergeant Mechanic, are you aware of a warrant that was executed on that vehicle on February 1st of 2022?
I am aware.
And you yourself were not present for that, is that correct?
I was not present for the execution, no, sir.
Trooper Proctor was, as far as you're aware, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, the next time that you were within the Canton Police Department Sallyport garage with the vehicle was on February 2nd, is that correct?
That's correct.
And on that day, where did the vehicle go from the police station?
From the Canton Police Station, I escorted the vehicle to the Milton Barracks for safekeeping.
And why was it taken from the Canton Police Station on February 2nd to the Milton Police Barracks? Or what had occurred in the intervening part between January 29th and February 2nd?
The Canton Police Department had recused themselves from interviews and in that portion of the investigation. And now that the vehicle had been processed, we needed to free up the Canton Sallyport so they can utilize that facility for transporting prisoners to their facility and booking. So we stored the now processed vehicle back at the Milton Barracks in a unheated garage.
And, Your Honor, if, with the court's permission, if I could publish just a very brief portion of what's been marked as Exhibit 34,
Okay.
which is the Canton Police Department Sallyport garage camera.
Okay.
And Ms. Gilman, what you have up there, I'm sorry, February 2nd, 2022, approximately 8:09 a.m. I'm just going to ask you to play that through till about 8:10:26. If you could pause there briefly. Sergeant, just for orientation purposes, again, this is another camera from within the same Sallyport garage, is that correct?
That's correct. That's the opposite view from what we just viewed in the previous video.
And as far as any of the people in this video, do you recognize any of the individuals in there?
I believe that's myself and then another officer. I don't know who that other officer is.
And just again, using the laser pointer, if you could, direct the jury's attention to where you see yourself. And as far as the condition of the vehicle from January 29th, when you saw it on that day, to February 2nd, when you saw it on that day, as far as the exterior of the vehicle, what, if anything, was different, or what, if anything, did you note or observe?
I noted the taillight removed and the evidence collected.
And as far as the snow and the caked on ice that you observed on that prior day, was that still present on February 2nd?
No, that had melted away.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could again, I'm sorry, just play through to 8:10:26. Thank you, Ms. Gilman. And you can take that down. And Mr. Officer, we can have the lights back on. Thank you. Now, Sergeant Buchanan, with regard to Mr. O'Keefe's house at One Meadows Avenue in Canton, at some point, did you become aware throughout the course of your investigation that there were exterior cameras affixed to that residence as well?
Yes, I did.
And those were Ring cameras, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, with respect to investigation, what, if any, steps were taken in order to secure any of that footage from the exterior of the house from the Ring?
Objection.
No, I'll allow it.
We applied for multiple search warrants.
Objection.
All right, I'll see you at sidebar on this.
Muted.
And so, sir, during the course, let me ask you this, as far as this or any other investigation is concerned, how is it that members of your unit sort of work through an investigation or work on a case?
We,
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I'm going to allow that.
as a case comes in, we address each case on individual basis based on the evidence that is presented through testimony and physical evidence that is recovered. That is what guides our investigations, and we then develop leads and process information collected. Sometimes information needs to be collected from third-party holders of data or service providers, at which point to access that data, we apply for search warrants, which are guided.
Objection.
Okay, so leave it, move on from that.
Thank you.
So you apply for search warrants, we'll move on from that.
So, Sergeant, my question is more geared toward as far as individual personnel within within your unit. How is it, is an investigation conducted as far as one trooper does everything, or is it a collaborative effort, or how is that? How is that?
The reason I say we is because every investigation takes the entire unit typically to put an effort in to conduct interviews, analysis, and so forth. So it's a team effort each and every time. No investigation is a one-man show. That's why we call it a case officer, not a lead investigator, because the case officer organizes the individuals to assign different tasks and collect and organize the data that comes back from the third-party providers and from the interviews that are conducted.
As far as the interviews that are conducted through the course of this or any other investigation, is there ever an interview that's conducted just by one trooper or one person in any investigation that you've done with this unit?
It is, no. We conduct interviews with two people, whether it's a trooper and a local detective, or two troopers assigned to our office, other state police agent unit within the agency.
Now, as far as the case officer, who was a case officer on this particular investigation?
The case officer in this investigation was Trooper Michael Proctor.
And Trooper Proctor works under your supervision, is that correct?
That's correct.
So as far as a search warrant for the Ring video from One Meadows Avenue, who specifically sat down, put pen to paper, and wrote the search?
Trooper Proctor was the affiant.
And as far as from that search warrant, are you aware of the materials that were provided by Ring in response to that search warrant?
Objection.
I'm going to allow it.
I am aware of it.
And have you reviewed both the material as well as the videos that were provided by Ring in response to that search?
I did.
Now, with reference to those videos, specifically, did you observe if you know, with respect to those videos, how were they sort of ordered sequentially when in the manner in which they were provided as far as date, time, things of that nature?
Objection.
Ask it differently. Ask it differently, Mr. Lally.
So the videos that you received from Ring that you reviewed, correct?
Yes, I did.
Objection, Your Honor.
No, I'll allow that. So he's reviewed videos from Ring. Next question.
What, if any, information did they contain as far as date or time?
The data provided back from Ring provided videos. There was no date and time on the labeling of the identifier, unique identifier for each video, but it was presented in a sequential order, knowing that the last video presented from the provider was the last video within the scope of our request, and the first one being the first in that timeline.
In the scope of your request, the scope of the request of the warrant, what time frame are we talking about?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
The first warrant we requested from January 24th at midnight through January 30th at midnight.
And with respect to those videos that were provided, you reviewed each of those, is that correct?
That's correct.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask to publish certain of those videos for the public this time.
So are these, why don't we come to sidebar?
You are unmuted.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have from what's been previously marked as Exhibit 6, first video 119. If you could pause there, Ms. Gilman. Now, with reference to this particular video, number 119 in Exhibit 6, Sergeant, what, if anything, can you tell the jury as far as the timing of this particular video?
Based on the appearance of the driveway, we know that this recording took place prior to the blizzard of January 29th.
And as far as anything that you observe in this video, as far as vehicles or people within those vehicles, what, if anything, did you observe within this video?
I observed Mr. O'Keefe's car parked in the same location as he typically parked it, and then
Objection.
I'll strike the as he typically parks.
and then a black SUV parked perpendicularly to Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, adjacent to the entryway to the garage.
Ms. Gilman, if you could press play on that. Gentlemen, if you could pause there. At some point in the course of your viewing of this video or the video surrounding it, were you able to identify the operator of the vehicle, black SUV?
Yes, that is the defendant operating her black and color Lexus SUV bearing Massachusetts plate 3 GC 684.
And if this gentleman, if you could play. Now, Sergeant Mechanic, are you also aware from your review of the ring videos from One Meadows Ave, another video depicting the defendant leaving the house sometime shortly after 5 a.m. on January 29th?
Yes, I am.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could also from Exhibit 6 ask for, video 153. If you could just pause there for a moment. Now, Sergeant, with reference to this video and the one just previously from 119, where is Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle parked in relation to this video vis-a-vis the other video?
The vehicle's parked in the back corner of the driveway along the fence in the same location as it's parked in the previous video.
And at some point, do you see the defendant's vehicle back out of the garage in the same directionality that it did in the prior video 119?
Yes, you do.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could address. Pause there for a second. Now, as far as the operator of that vehicle, are you able to observe who that operator is within that vehicle?
I observed the vehicle being operated. I cannot identify who the individual is, and then from that shot right there.
From at any point in the shot or the video that you observed, are we able to recognize the operator's vehicle?
Not from that shot, no.
Now, with respect to the timing of this video, what time in the morning is this video?
The timing of this video is approximately 5:07 a.m. when the defendant left the home through the garage via her vehicle.
Ms. Gilman, if you could play through there. Now, from this particular pause portion of the video, Sergeant, what, if anything, of significance do you observe within the still shot of this portion of the video 153?
The portion of this video in the still shot presented identifies a missing, damaged rear right taillight, exposing the white light coming from the right side of that taillight.
And if you could, using the laser pointer before you, draw the jury's attention to what you're talking about as far as that area of the defendant's vehicle. Now, earlier in that video, did you observe the defendant's vehicle coming close to or coming into contact with Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle?
Yes, I did.
And as far as Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle, at least from this video, what, if any, damage did you observe to Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle?
No damage.
And as far as the ground area around where Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle is parked, specifically the rear of that vehicle, what, if any, red pieces or anything do you observe on the ground around Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle?
Nothing was observed.
Ms. Gilman, if you could press play. And Ms. Gilman, from Exhibit 6, if I could have video number 165. You can pause there, please. And Sergeant, have you reviewed this video as well?
Yes, I have.
And when time-wise, in relation to January 29th, approximately is this video?
It's approximately like 12:30 in the afternoon.
And as far as the vehicles in the foreground area from this particular camera shot, you know whose vehicles those are?
Yes. The vehicle in the top left corner is Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle. Vehicle in the middle left is the defendant's vehicle. And I do not know who the other two vehicles are.
Ms. Gilman, if you could press play. Pause there just for a moment, Ms. Gilman. And Sergeant, from the two individuals exiting from that vehicle, do you recognize who those individuals are?
Yes, I do.
And if you could, just using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to whom you recognize and identify who that person is.
That there is the defendant, and that there is Mr. Reed.
Again, Mr. Reed, the defendant's father, is that correct?
That's correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could press play. Thank you. Ms. Gilman, if you could pull up video 166 from the same Exhibit 6. Ms. Gilman, if you could pause there just for a moment. Sergeant, do you recognize the person that just exited from that vehicle and behind the defendant's vehicle?
Yes, I do.
Who do you recognize that to be?
As the defendant's brother.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could press play. Thank you, Ms. Gilman. If I could have from the same Exhibit 6, video 171. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. Mr. Officer, we can have the lights back on. Sergeant, from your review of those videos, at various points you observed the defendant's brother cleaning off the defendant's car, correct?
That's correct.
At any point in time, did you observe the defendant's brother cleaning off the area of the right rear passenger side's taillight of the defendant's car?
I did not.
Now, Sergeant, turning your attention to February 1st of 2022, yourself and Trooper Connor Keith, is that someone you're familiar with?
I am.
And he works within your unit as well?
Yes, he does.
And at some point, did you and Trooper Keith on that day go to the C.F. McCarthy's establishment?
Yes, we did.
And what was the purpose of your visit to C.F. McCarthy's on that day?
The purpose of our visit was to retrieve surveillance video during the target time in question that we knew the victim and the defendant had visited that establishment. Also, any transaction receipts that we could collect from that location.
And were you able to retrieve both video as well as transaction receipts from that establishment?
We were.
And I'm sorry, my apologies. Before I get into that, may I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
And Sergeant, I'm showing you a series of 14 photographs or still shots. If you could just look at those and look up when you finish. And do you recognize those, sir?
I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
I recognize these to be still photographs of the ring video that we just watched.
And that would be video 153, the one with the defendant backing out sometime after 5 a.m. on January 29th.
That's correct.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Come up, seek to introduce and admit as the next exhibit.
No objection.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Your Honor, with the court's permission, may I publish just a couple of these photographs? for the
Okay.
jury? Ms. Gilman, if I could have photograph number 30. And Sergeant, you recognize what's up on the screen now as Exhibit 456?
I do.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could just zoom towards the rear of the vehicle. Have a moment, Charlie.
Yes.
And Sergeant, what's up on the screen now? If you could direct the jury's attention with that laser pointed to the area of the rear passenger side tail light that you were describing damaging. Thank you, sir. Okay. Ms. Gilman, you can take that too. Thank you, sir. Mr. Officer, you can have the lights back up. Thank you, sir. So Sergeant Mechanic, if I could take you again, I'm sorry, back on February 1st to CF McCarthy's. You secured video and receipts from that establishment on that day.
That's correct.
And as far as the video and receipts, were you then able to subsequently review those at some point?
Yes, I was.
Now, first, starting with respect to the video, Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you two photographs of still shots. Just ask you to look at those, look up when you're finished. And do you recognize those, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
Those are still shots of the CF McCarthy's surveillance video that we collected from that establishment, from the dining room camera angle.
May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm about to seek to introduce in a minute as the next exhibit.
No objection.
Thank you.
461. Thank you.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could ask that those be published to the jury at this point.
Okay.
And Sergeant Mechanic, you recognize what's up on the screen?
Yes, I do.
And if you could, using the laser pointer, draw the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observed this still shot from the CF McCarthy's video.
We observe the victim, Mr. John O'Keefe, here. Appears to be communicating with the defendant here. Mr. Camarano is over here as well. Mr. Sullivan is down here as well. Mr. O'Keefe is wearing the gray light two-tone sweatshirt that I held up earlier, as well as the jeans.
And the next still shot is going to be. And similar to this, similar to the previous one, excuse me, Sergeant, do you recognize what's depicted in this still shot here?
Yes, it's, again, the victim on the other side of the defendant, still dressed in the same outfit, and the defendant standing in front of him.
And as far as the bar area adjacent to the defendant, what, if anything, of significance do you know there?
The bar area is located near the taps, the draft beer taps at C.F. McCarthy's. So if you were to look at the bar from the street, that is the left side of the bar orientation on the way to the restrooms.
And I'm sorry, I should have been more specific. As far as the sort of shelf of the bar immediately adjacent to the defendant's left arm, what, if anything, do you observe that?
Here, I observe a cylindrical vase-style cocktail glass on the bar, as well as other beer bottles.
Okay. Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. With reference to the C.F. McCarthy's video, Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would ask to publish certain portions of that. It's already been marked as Exhibit 50.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if you could, from the first video. If I could ask you to pull it up to about 7 minutes and 50 seconds. And Ms. Gilman, if you could pause just for a moment, I'm just going to ask you to play from 7:50 to about 8 minutes and 20 seconds in, but I may ask you to pause it. Ms. Gilman, if you could pause there. Sergeant, as far as just, again, for orientation purposes, with reference to the entrance or exit, point of ingress, egress to the bar, do you observe that somewhere within this video?
Yes, at the top of the screen is the front door to C.F. McCarthy's bar. And as we just viewed, the two gentlemen walking in, they walked in through the front door, heading to the taps area, draft beer location of the bar.
And if you could, just using the laser pointer, direct your attention to that front door area that you're talking about.
The front door area is located right here.
And with respect to those two individuals that came in, do you recognize those two individuals?
Yes, that is the victim, Mr. John O'Keefe, dressed in the same outfit as before, and Mr. Camerano.
Ms. Gilman, if you could play that till about 8:20. And Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you from the same exhibits, same exhibit 50, from the third video now. If I could ask you to go to about 6 minutes and 10 seconds in. And I'm going to ask you to play that till about 6 minutes and 43 seconds. If I could ask you to pause just there. As far as the individuals around Mr. O'Keefe and Mr. Camerano, do you observe or recognize anybody else in the bar area around them at this time?
Mr. O'Keefe is sitting next to Mr. Camerano. I believe Mr. Kurt Roberts is there as well, next to Mr. Camerano.
Now, from this time, we're at about 8:51 p.m. or so within the video. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, as far as the timestamp on this video, what, if any, information were you provided when you retrieved this video on February 1st in relation to that time and its accuracy to sort of what time was?
During video surveillance extraction, we verify the time and date on the system, and that is to show us how far behind in the past or in the future. Sometimes devices are time-stamped that's in the future. It hasn't happened yet in real time, but the video is stamped so. So what we do is, prior to extracting video, we identify the difference in time between real time and video time. In this case, C.F. McCarthy's video was 12 minutes behind real time.
And Thank you. And Ms. Gilman, if you could play this to about 6 minutes and 40, please. Just pause there briefly, Ms. Gilman. As far as anyone else within the area of the bar, the area of Mr. O'Keefe, come around, Mr. Roberts, who, if anyone else, do you recognize in that area at this point?
I recognize the defendant walking in and interacting with the victim, Mr. John O'Keefe.
Ms. Gilman, if you could, within that same video 3, I would ask you to go to about 13 minutes and 15 seconds. And I'm going to ask you to play from here to about 14 minutes and 45 seconds. Pause there. Now, from your review of this video, what, if anything, of significance do you observe in this part of the video?
This part of the video, I observed the defendant reaching over and retrieving a cylindrical, tall cocktail glass from the bartender.
And again, given the understanding that the video is about 12 minutes off as far as the timestamp, the defendant entered about 8:51 p.m. and is receiving this drink about 8:58 p.m. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if you could, Ms. Gilman, play that to. Now, Ms. Gilman, if you could go up to about 32 minutes even in to the same video. Now I'm going to ask you to play that for the next 30 seconds or so to about 32 minutes and 30 seconds. And Sergeant, during that about 30 seconds or so, what, if anything, of significance did you observe the defendant to receive at that point?
A cylindrical cocktail glass.
And so that would be the second drink, is that correct?
That's correct.
And that's at approximately 9:15, is that correct?
That's correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if you could go forward to about 37 minutes into this same video. If you could play that for about the next minute or so, to about 38 minutes. And Sergeant, again, from that about 1 minute portion from that video, what, if anything, of significance did you observe the defendant receive and do with any items?
She received the shot glass beverage and poured it into the tall cylindrical cocktail glass, and then Mr. John O'Keefe stirred it for her.
And so that would now be the third drink, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that's about 9:20 p.m., is that correct?
That's correct.
Ms. Gilman, if I could direct you to the fourth video, video number 4. And ask you to go about 50 seconds into into this video. And I'm going to ask you to play this, Ms. Gilman, from 50 seconds to about 1:30. Thank you, Ms. Gilman. So, Sergeant, from this particular video, what, if anything, of significance do you observe the defendant receiving during this time frame?
She receives another shot glass beverage and then places that liquid into her tall cocktail glass and stacks the second shot glass into the first shot glass into the first tall cylindrical cocktail glass she had previously received and consumed.
So this would now be the fourth drink, is that correct?
That is correct.
And per the video, that's about 9:33 p.m., is that correct?
That is correct.
And Ms. Gilman, within this same video, if I could ask you to go to about 26 minutes and 30 seconds. Ms. Gilman, if you could pause there for just a moment. I'm going to ask you to play this until about 27:40. Thank you, Ms. Gilman. During that period, Sergeant, what, if anything, of significance did you observe the defendant to receive during that time frame?
She received a tall cylindrical cocktail glass.
And in addition to that, what, if anything else, did she receive from the bartender during that time?
A shot glass size beverage.
And what, if anything, did she do with the shot glass in regard to the larger cylindrical glass?
It was placed inside the tall cylindrical cocktail glass.
So that would be drinks 5 and 6, is that correct?
That's correct.
And per the timestamp on the bar video, this is now about 9:57 p.m., is that correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could direct you to video number 5. And if I could ask you to go to about 3 minutes in. And ask you to play that till about 3:30 or so. Thank you, Ms. Gilman. And if I could ask you to go to about 10 minutes and 30 seconds in. And I would ask you to play that for about a minute to about 11:30 or so. Thank you, Ms. Gilman. So Sergeant, sort of rounder shots during this portion of the video, is that correct?
That's
Yeah, sustained. You can ask it differently.
What, if anything, of significance did you observe the defendant and/or the group that she was with do in this portion of the video?
in this portion of the video, the two gentlemen to the right of the defendant consume a shot-size beverage.
And as far as the shot glass that the defendant received, what, if anything, do you observe her to do with that?
Objection.
I'll allow it. Or strike that. Just what did you observe, not what she had.
What did you observe the defendant to do during that portion?
Prior to the shots being taken, a shot glass was poured into the cylindrical tall glass.
And again, so that would be drink number 7 at that point?
That would be drink number 6.
And I'm sorry, so the previous portion was a cylindrical drink and then a shot glass that was 5 and 6, is that correct?
Objection.
I think that was the testimony, but ask it differently.
As far as that drink during that portion, is that drink number 6 or drink number 7?
Objection.
Yeah, in that form, I'll sustain it.
At this point in time in the video, after watching what you watched, how many drinks has the defendant consumed at this point?
At this point, she's consumed or is in possession of
Objection.
I'll allow it.
6 drinks.
And this is at approximately 10:29 p.m., is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Ms. Gilman, if you could go to about 20 minutes and 30 seconds in. Actually, play for the next 10, 20 seconds or so. So during that portion of the video, what, if anything, do you observe as to the drink the defendant has and how full it is at that point?
She has a cylindrical tall cocktail glass in her hand.
And can you observe, or did you observe how full that glass was?
Drink number 6 is empty, or near the bottom, almost empty.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could ask you to go to about 22 minutes and 40, I'm sorry, 22:40 or so within for the time stamp, I'm sorry. Now, from this portion of the video, Sergeant, what, if anything, do you observe the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe doing in reference to C.F. McCarthy?
Once the defendant got drink number 7, the defendant and Mr. O'Keefe walk out of C.F. McCarthy's, the defendant holding the beverage, tall cylindrical glass in her hand.
Thank you, sir. Now, may I approach?
Yes.
Ms. Gilman, you can take that down. I'm sorry. So I'm showing you the 5-page document. That's to review that, look up when we finish. And do you recognize that document, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize it to be?
I recognize it to be a series of transaction receipts from the tabs at C.F. McCarthy's.
And are these the transaction receipts or tabs that you received, you and Trooper Keefe received from C.F. McCarthy's on February 1st, 2022?
Yes, they are.
And with reference to those receipts or tabs, to whom, if anyone of significance, do those tabs pertain to?
The first one for 5280 was opened under the bar tab Karen A. Reed.
And is there also a receipt from John O'Keefe?
Yes, it is. The transaction through the credit card, being a MasterCard for 5280, was paid by Mr. John J. O'Keefe.
And with reference to the items listed within that particular receipt, what, if any, items of significance do you observe listed on the receipts?
On the Karen A. Reed's receipt, 1 Tito's, $10, 1 Tito's, $10, 1 Coors Light, $5.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
May I approach, John?
Yes.
Call multi to introduce and admit as an next exhibit.
We probably should approach
Okay.
briefly.
You are unmuted.
And so, Sergeant Mechanic, on those receipts from C.F. McCarthy's under both Ms. Reed's receipt and Mr. O'Keefe's receipt, there was Tito's vodka listed on the receipt, correct?
Correct.
Now, also on February 1st, what, if any, other establishments did you go to in the town of King?
Myself and Trooper Keefe went up across the street to the Waterfall Bar and Grill and retrieved transaction receipts and video from there as well.
And as far as the video is concerned from that establishment, have you reviewed that video as well?
Yes, I did.
And with regard to the receipts from that establishment, you reviewed those as well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
So I'm showing you 4 photographs or still shots. If you could review those and look up when you're finished. And you recognize those, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize those to be?
Those are still shots of surveillance video from the Waterfall Bar and Grill on the night of January 29th after midnight. And Mr. O'Keefe is depicted in the still shot.
And those are both interior as well as exterior camera shots of Mr. O'Keefe's sort of exit from the waterfall. Is that correct?
That's correct. Interior, him leaving at 12:11 a.m., which the timestamp on the surveillance video at the waterfall was accurate to real time. He is holding a beverage, shorter cocktail glass in his right hand as he exits the establishment. He's seen on the exterior camera walking towards Washington Street.
Thank you. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm about to seek to introduce in a minute.
No objection.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could ask that these be published for the jury.
Yes.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could just have the first one. My apologies. Ms. Gilman, if I could have the first one from the interior. Thank you. And Sergeant, do you recognize what's up on the screen, which is now been marked as exhibit 464?
I do.
And what do you recognize that to be?
That is the still shots presented to me and entered into the exhibit of Mr. O'Keefe walking out of the Waterfall Bar and Grill at 12:11 a.m. on the night of the early morning hours of January 29th, holding a cocktail glass.
And if I could have the second still from this set. Ms. Gilman. And again, do you recognize what's up on the screen, sir?
Yes, sir.
And if you could, using the laser pointer before you, just direct the jury's attention to where you observed Mr. O'Keefe and what, if anything, you observed Mr. O'Keefe holding as he's exiting the waterfall.
Mr. O'Keefe is observed here. He's holding that shorter, fatter cocktail glass as he's walking out of the establishment.
And Ms. Gilman, if I could have from the exterior, just the second one, please. And again, Sergeant, do you recognize what's up on the screen, which is now marked as exhibit 467?
Yes, I do.
And if you could, using the laser pointer, direct the jury's attention to what, if anything, of significance you observed in this still.
This is Mr. O'Keefe walking out of the Waterfall establishment, holding the cocktail glass in his right hand as he walks towards Washington Street.
Thanks. Ms. Gilman, you can take that. Mr. Officer, we can have the lights. Thank you, sir. Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
Sir, I'm showing you what's been previously marked as exhibit 54, just ask you to look at that and look up if you could. And do you recognize what's contained in Exhibit 54?
I do recognize it, yes.
And are those the receipts that you received from the waterfall when you went there on February 1st?
Yes, they are.
Thank you. May I approach again, Your Honor? Just-
Yes.
Now, sir, with reference to the waterfall, in regard to the timestamp on that surveillance video, what, if anything, were you told as far as the accuracy of that timestamp when you retrieved that video?
That video is confirmed to be accurate in time, as in real time. No discrepancy.
And Your Honor, with the court's permission, if I could just publish 3 quick clips from what's been marked as Exhibit 53.
Okay.
Ms. Gilman, if I could ask from channel 3, the second video down. If I could ask you to go from the timestamp on the top of the screen to 10:54 in 25 seconds. If you could play them. I could ask you to pause right there. So, Sergeant, from that particular portion of the video, what, if anything, of significance did you observe occur there?
That portion of video depicts Mr. John O'Keefe walking in with the defendant gesturing to a group of people at the top of the screen, and then Mr. O'Keefe walking over and giving a hug to an individual that's part of the group.
So from the same channel 3, Ms. Gilman, if I could have from the 4th video down. If I could ask you to go 11:39 in 40 seconds. Pause there, thank you. And in about 5 to 10 seconds or so, I'm going to ask Ms. Gilman if you could pause it, and I'm just going to ask Sergeant if you could direct your attention to sort of the top right corner of the screen. Thank you. Pause there. From that portion of the video, you observed the defendant in that portion of the video?
Yes, I did.
And what, if anything, did you observe her to be doing?
She retrieves a drink from the table and appears to consume it.
Now, as far as the drink and the tall cylindrical glass that you observed her walking out of C.F. McCarthy's with, what, if anything, do you observe from the glass that she's taking a sip of from this portion of the video, the waterfall?
It's a shorter, fatter style glass compared to the cylindrical tall style that she walked out of C.F. McCarthy's with.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gilman, you can take that. And Mr. Officer, if we could have the lights. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Lally, why don't we end for the day? It's been a long day. Everybody ready to go home? Yeah, okay. All right, so Sergeant, we're going to meet you back tomorrow, and I'll ask you to just follow the jurors out when they leave. So jurors, those same reminders, please do not discuss this case with anyone. Don't do any independent research or investigation into the case. If you happen to see, hear, or read anything about the case, please disregard it and let us know. We'll see you tomorrow.
All rise for the court, please. Jurors, follow me.
And I will see counsel at sidebar about scheduling, please.
Sidebar, please.
All rise.